Latest Nibiru, Planet X, timeline, graphs, charts, video footage, 13 separate accounts, Earth changes, global chaos connections, Dave Dobbs, leak project. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Rex Bear, and during this presentation with David Fields, author of Laughing Gas, also the founder of the Dave Dobbs YouTube channel, he shares with us a blockbuster 10-year timeline of Nibiru sightings. This is incredible video footage, and whether you believe it's Planet X, Nemesis, Wormwood, Nibiru, the Red Kachina, or highly concentrated swamp gas from Uranus, you will see with your own eyes some incredible sky anomalies that are absolutely not lens flares. Mr. Fields lives in the Pyrenees and has archived dozens of sightings combined with earthquakes, orbital chart correlations, and other Earth cataclysms. Make sure to subscribe to his YouTube channel, Dave Dobbs. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/clandestine Time Lord. Become a contributing member at leakproject.com. Your contributions greatly help Leak Project pick up a high-resolution vinyl decal today for $10 at leakproject.com and be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Enjoy the presentation.
Very much for inviting me to come and talk on Leak Project.
Well, I think it's fantastic that you're out there in the Pyrenees. I love watching the Tour de France every single year. Those guys can climb up those mountains at like 23, 24 miles an hour. It's just insane what they can do on bicycles. So beautiful out there. And the fact that you're on the other side of the world, it's great that we're going to be able to find your information, because many of the people that I've interviewed do live here in the United States. We've talked to people that are out in Hong Kong and other areas as well. But I haven't talked to anybody that's in the Pyrenees. So this is fantastic. I know that you've been researching Planet X, cataclysms, global chaos for years. You've got a great YouTube channel. Folks that have a chance to listen to this podcast, I strongly recommend going to the Dave Dobbs YouTube channel, and you'll get access to a bounty of podcasts with good information. So what I was hoping that we could do is we talked a little bit off the record about what's going on around the world right now. The economies, at least a lot of the Western economies, are certainly on turmoil. We were talking about the possibility of devaluation of certain currencies. And tell us what's going on with you and your side info, please.
I mean, it just feels like, you know, you had Theresa May kind of starting the month off with the kind of like the Brexit kind of full steam ahead starting gun. And that was kind of... well, let me just pull up this on this website here. I just kind of like it's one of these websites just shows you kind of the sort of like general kind of look of what's going on the 3rd. Have you got my screen there? You know, it's the 3rd of October, but obviously it's the beginning of the financial week in October, and you know you've had this kind of news that border and security, the borders and the whole refugee kind of like border security is more important than trade. Is somehow more important. That's the indication on that day, was that the trade is less important than border and securities. And that basically, in my translation, the way I'm seeing it, it means that we've kind of failed in our negotiations in this Brexit process. Or we're failing, and this is you have to ask yourself, why are they going for Brexit? What's actually happening? What's the precursor for this? You know, this is a massive choice to take. You know, I wrote in my book, I wrote about this in 2012. I published the book in 2012 saying that we would reach a juncture where we would have a choice of whether we stayed in Europe or if we left, and that if we left, we'd be cutting our anchors, and it would be a disastrous decision. And you know, I published that in 2012, and so to see this whole process and to see this kicking off, and so at the beginning of the month you see this, but then you also see at the beginning of the month. Can you see the Financial Times here? This website that's showing the financial site, the headline when's this launched now? That will be around about the same time, almost exactly the same time, the beginning of the month. So that's about 5 weeks before the elections, isn't it? The US elections. A goal back, I can never even say it, renminbi. I don't know how people are going to learn to say that, because it's such a difficult word to say. But, you know, that it's basically, I'm going to now change this and bring this over to what's called the AIIB, and this is what this is all built around. And if we come here, we can see China obviously has 26% of the say. You know, when you heard the G20 going off just before when September was coming to an end, and Obama didn't get the red carpet treatment of the G20, you knew something was seriously going on. Of course, America's not even on this list, but actually, I know which are the biggest. You know, outside it's going to be it's India that's going to be the next one outside of China, the second biggest, if you like, outside of China. And then Russia's going to be next, Germany's going to be next, and it's going to filter on down. Britain's got a very small percentage of this. Still quite large compared to some other countries, but very small compared to its actual banking status it has with the pound and the US dollar. And this is a gold-backed currency. This is like, to a speculative currency, this is like to a vampire. It's gold-backed security, and you have to understand that if there really is something very big coming in, the money's going to try and do what we're all going to try and do, which is go for safety. Are you still there, Rex? Are you still with me?
I sure am, and I'm thinking about what happened to the Deutsche Bank recently. Their stock prices just took a huge hit, and they're down to about $13 a share right now. There was also some chatter that somebody from the Pentagon came out and released this information that there was over $6.5 trillion in debt. I couldn't find any viable sources to that, though, just a bunch of conspiracy websites. But with that said, I see so much going on in the world right now as far as currencies go, and the media, at least if you watch any of the American TV shows like Mr. Robot, is really portraying this society of a financial fiat currency reset, and the new currency is going to be this digitized system. So it seems as if you look at all the stuff out there, it's all kind of coming together at the same time.
I'm seeing the same thing. Something massive is going on, and then what we're hearing about in Russia, this massive drill.
40 million people are involved in that.
When I was up here, I started looking at all the different sightings of twin-tailed objects, and I started finding these correlations, and I started building a timeline. And the timeline has become when people think about, from what I'm understanding from the comments, last year I had a great deal of difficulty. I was bombarded with really negative comments, but this year it's been a lot more people. I've had a lot more evidence, and a lot more aware of it and the anomalies. And so really, I think before we go too much further, I think, because I've got really quite a small audience, and you've got really quite an amazingly big audience there. And I don't know how many people actually fundamentally know the timeline that I've actually put together and how it's been built. And I think, it's about 15, 20 minutes or something. And so I thought I could take you through the whole timeline so we can understand. If we can understand what's going on in this timeline, then we can understand why everything is happening right now. So we can be crystal clear about, we've got 13 sightings to go through that are all consecutive.
That's great. Now, let me jump in real quick if I can also, Dave. You brought up, we both brought this up, the Russians that are doing these huge drills right now. And I did some research into that. And because the media sometimes will take something that seems like a pretty big deal, and it is, and they'll make it this just Brobdingnagian monster that's got 50 tentacles that have titanium alloy rods that come out of their eyeballs that attack everybody, and just, you get my point. So I did some research into that. And yes, it's a big deal. And we do that kind of stuff here too in America. I mean, most nations have some type of drill where they do preparedness exercises. And I went back to find out when they started doing these specific drills. And it was in 2012. So I thought to myself, 2012, the infamous year that was talked about with the Mayans, the American media really did a big spin on it, I feel, to make this wag the dog / cry wolf scenario about, oh, the end of the world, 2012, 2012, 2012, then we're still here. So when other people in the future see possible cataclysms, they bring that out into the open. Well, they can say, well, what about 2012 when you said everybody was going to die? What about 2003 when you said Nibiru was going to blow us all up? So I think that it's just all kind of finally orchestrated to keep people confused. And you're going to have the division. You're going to have one side of the coin that people strongly believe 100% in Planet X. And then on the other side of the coin, not the shills, not the trolls, not the government disinformation agents. You're going to have people that genuinely believe it's a hoax. So, how do we bridge the gap here? And I think that what you're bringing to the table with these different accounts could, help people understand, hey, it gives them an opportunity to make the decision for themselves.
Yeah, totally. No, I'm with you all the way. So can you still hear me?
Yes, sir.
Walk through it. So this is basically where most of the people who know me, where I've left off. So we're going from the 9th of July. This was the last sighting I put up. One of my subscribers, Sue H, put it up. And then we come to, I've put the background noise here, but that's just the video. I'm not going to play the sound of the video, but that's the 14th of September. This is Blue Star 712. Now, another subscriber has been taking loads of pictures, has been sending me these images. I wasn't too sure if there was a rocket or first. This is all very recent. We're going to see his next shot in a moment as well. But let's just take the time just to observe. Well, it looks almost like a flashing something at the top there. But as he's gonna darken the here we go. He's gonna darken this a little bit, and you can see it's very spherical like at the end, with the tail actually runs right up to the sphericalness of the sphere at the very top of it. I mean, it was a breathtaking shot. So that's where and then we just come now to the 6th of October, which was yesterday. And he took this shot again. I've just put his name up there. Like I say, he's a subscriber, but it's the same thing. This is up there now, and you're about to see this and get shots of this yourself if you do the observation. Because where this is only coming towards us. So there we have these 13. Number 1, this number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8, number 9, number 10, number 11, number 12, and lastly this number 13. And then we come to there's these shots that Steve Olson's been bringing up. You've obviously been doing an enormous amount of this, interviewing Steve Olson, interviewing Chris Potter. What's happening with Chris Potter? I mean,
well, I saw his last video that he had before he shut the channel down, and essentially he just said, at least from what I picked up, that he's had enough of the journey as far as that channel, enough on that specific experiment or project, and he's off to do other things. So, yeah.
Well,
as well, Chris Potter.
It's because Chris was one of the real people that when I first started making the videos, Chris and Steve Olson, they both started as such kind of that, they both entered in a very similar sort of fashion with this kind of real strong Christian ethos entering into their message.
Right.
And they both became scientists, didn't they? They both became total scientists, total, the research that Steve Olson is doing now, the way the level of his discourse that I'm hearing and the way he's going into the stuff and what he's looking at now. and the way he's throwing information around, I'm really liking it. I'm seeing this massive journey. I saw this massive journey with Chris Potter.
Yeah, they're both good people, and their hearts are definitely in the right place. I think I've, known Steve now for quite some time, interviewed him a few times, and I certainly appreciate the work that he does. And yeah, they do seem to have a real strong Christian background. And I know people who listen to the Leak Project know I'm not personally Christian, yet I strongly appreciate their values. And, I don't care what your religious preference is. I don't care what your spiritual belief is. If you're a good person, you can worship a three-headed Smurf for all I care. If you got good intentions, good morals, good values, you do the right thing. I don't care what you believe in. Have fun. Don't tread on me and I won't tread on you.
No, it's well said. And I love it. And I just think that, when you follow in faith, and you're living out the teachings of what's in the Bible, and that's what they are. They're teachings. When you're living these things out, it's very different to when you're preaching them and judging people and judging yourself too harshly as well. There's lovely things to these parables. I just feel as if we get too much lost in the kind of the details. But one thing that's really come up in all the channels, and I've put a selection of things from your channel when you interviewed Chris and when you interviewed various people on your channel. I thought I'd use that and bring this all together from this little clan, just because this thing is massively in the debate and no one really knows what this thing is. Let me just run this through. Because there's some of it from the last video that you put up. There's this video that's this thing that is coming. We don't know what it is. People are saying it's a lens flare. Except we've got this kind of what looks like a structure into it. It literally looks like a structure in there. This is from the sightings that we're seeing. This is looking like it's as big, if not bigger, than a planet. And I've put, for me, the message I've been given is that we are being massively protected. And I was always led to understand, I never knew what it would be, but I was always led to understand that there was some kind of shield up there. And I never really knew what it was for or why it was. You have to understand, both my parents are both channels, and I had all these messages about this from right throughout my life, actually, right up from when I was about, 7 or 8 years of age. My parents were channeling and telling me about all these things, and so much of it I just couldn't get my head around. And suddenly seeing, these images which have been coming in from the Stetchy stereo A. I think stereo B is completely. I don't know if it's down or it's just down temporarily. But these images that this one I believe came in 2007, and we've got lots of different debate on the internet as to what this thing is, whether it's just some kind of weird lens flare or whatever it is. But I'm of an opinion that this thing is just the fact it's green says something really quite beautiful. That appears as up there as this green thing. I'm just seeing it as a massive shield, as a massive point of protection, and I'm feeling that this thing. If I just jump forward, I've just put this kind of as this thing really as a shield. And the message I was given when I was first started writing Laughing Gas is that nothing gets past the wall. That's what I wasn't told about Nibiru or anything. The whole book is about, it opens with, Laughing Gas literally opens with Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. And it was this concept of this wall. And in one sense, we live on this dividing wall, this kind of, we sit on the fence in so many things. Our whole political system is kind of created out of this left and right wing political nonsense where we are left not really knowing which way to go. And so we don't make a choice. And that's the whole intention of this game, is to turn you into a Humpty. But of course, the wall that we're sitting on is the wall that we can't go any further than, we've reached a wall on every front here. You see, on technological fronts, we've reached a wall in terms of we can't take war any further on this plane because there's nothing that can be achieved. We all have to go and live in underground bunkers because we destroy the entire world. It's not going to happen. We haven't got a future. That's game over. And so we've reached a wall in terms of our technological frontier, in terms of war. You know, in terms of our environmental frontier, we've reached a wall. We can see it on every frontier. Our oceans are dying. We can see what Fukushima's done to the Pacific. We can see what all our pollution is doing. We can see what all our over nitrate, farming of the land and just stripping all the soil of all its nutrients, our utter dependence on sort of like fossil fuel to grow all that. Our economies are literally, all this oil that we think it's just cars we're running. But of course, it's the nitrate industry, which is actually so much of that fuel is going to make nitrogen fertilizer. We've had since 1850, we were 1.3 billion people. Now we're going up to 7 billion people. And that's all to do with nitrous-based fertilizers that have been created with massive use of fossil fuel. If the petrodollar collapses, so does the food chain. This is why our governments are more terrified than anything else. This is what failure of the US dollar fundamentally means. It means the end of food. That's what they're really scared about. Not that it would completely end like that, because obviously another currency would come in and fill the void. As soon as the US dollar goes down, there's going to be lots of other currencies out there. It's going to be, the first one you can get a good currency up and running after the dollar collapses is going to be kind of like, they're going to be in because the world's going to want to get on. Do you see what I'm saying? So it doesn't actually have, the financial worry isn't the real worry here. It's why we're having all this. We can see by the timeline that I'm putting together, we can see that we've come to the last 100-day run in this timeline. We get to the end of this 100 days, we're either going to find out that we've got one more cycle round, one more year and one more month cycle round the sun again before we get even closer, or this passing is going to be the biggest passing. It's absolute. It's without any doubt. The comments I'm getting now are just very different to what I was getting last year. People that are really seriously preparing and are doing a lot of things. And, we can see that this thing, we're in the last 100-day cycle. And because I don't truly know which way round, it goes around, Nibiru goes around Nemesis. That's the absolute bottom line truth. In all this data, it's still very difficult for anyone I've seen to actually really be able to isolate which way it's going. Even the October 2013 footing in Australia, where it's like a big, quarter-sized moon. We don't know whether it was on the top of Nemesis or on the bottom of Nemesis at that point. There's still so much unknown. NASA obviously know, all these space agencies knows, but they know, but they know, but they're not telling. So we've got this kind of window of like 50 to 100 days each side of the kind of like the 11th of December, that it can fall either side more or less of that date. That's why I kind of use that date, because with the information I've got, which I've shown you, I cannot say. I'm doing the very best I can to try and number crunch what I've done, but there's so many unknowns here. And judging by what happened in February 2010 and then March 2011, we could have a very similar situation where we could have a really big crossing now in sort of December, January, and then a massive one in February, a year and a month later. But I've got to be honest with you, the way I'm looking at it and the timeline of it coming in and the whole angle and the fact that it looks like it's coming out from, it's going to be heading out at a much shallower angle than it came in. It's really time. You can see that this sighting that's just been sent in, the last sightings that I've put up, we've got this massive storm hitting America right now. It's all fitting together. It's one of those times where we have to kind of move beyond our beliefs and start doing. And to be honest with you, I can kind of see why Chris Potter has closed his channel. You know, I'm of a mind now that there's another message for me that's coming out. There's the other message that's coming for me to the forefront here, Rex, and that's the original message of why I wrote Laughing Gas, and the original message of what's really happening. You know, this is not the end of this world. This thing's going to fly by. That's always been the message I've been given. This thing comes and this thing goes and it flies by. You know, the literal message I got was, the first thing I said was, when do you step in? When I communicated, if you like, to my God up in the mountains in the Himalayas when I was writing Laughing Gas. And I said, when do you step in? And bear in mind, it took me 4 months writing 6 hours a day, going into this very deep sort of process. You know, 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 hours a day, writing everything. You have to go right through yourself, not let any part of yourself escape. You want to hear and feel every part of what's coming through you, and to start listening to deeper messages that are coming through you. And this is how my father, who's a channel, he was the one who showed me this technique. And when I got through, I said, when do you step in? And the answer I got was, as of the moment, I have both feet in. But if you don't want me, I'll take both feet out. And that's when I started understanding a lot more about the protection that's been given, that's been set up through this massive array of protection that's been brought in by, if you like, the ambassadors of the gods. You know, the highest intelligence in us, in our universe is, you know, Earth is a very high vibrational planet. It's had to persevere with domination of more advanced species that have taken advantage of our you know, we've been a fledgling race in terms of intellectual property, and so we've been coming up slowly, rising up, and what's happening is we're actually becoming neck and neck with other intelligent races on this earth, believe it or not. That's the message that I'm given. And so this is the most important thing, is that this is about coming of age more than anything else. And Nibiru is not, when I was shown Nibiru, finally shown actually Nibiru itself in a dream, and I finally saw it, and I saw it flying by Earth, I went running to my computer, and I went straight to this space that sometimes can take me absolute months and months and months of work to get into that space where I get the answers that I'm looking for. And I went straight into that space, and I said, it misses, doesn't it? And the immediate answer I got was, yes, it misses. It's not human. It is not human karma. It said, it is deemed you are not a race at war, but you are a race subverted with war. And that will now change. It was just like, and then I was just thrown out of it. And I tell you, when I go into that space and that door, you know, it's just a beautiful space in my own heart that I can open up. And you have to go right through yourself on many different levels. You know, we'll see yourself like as you know, my guide, ironically, is called Running Water. I hope this isn't too hippie for you, Rex, when I'm talking about this. It's just my writing practice.
Oh, this is great, man. Let's go with it.
Everyone has a writing practice, but my guide is called, he came to me years ago and by the name of Running Water. And it was channeled from my mother then. And it was an incredible experience. And it was an incredible experience because I said, what's your name? And he said to me, why you ask me my name when you know it so well? And I was perplexed as to and then he started telling me two other names, that one name that I used to go by, and one name that I knew him by in bygone lives. But all the time he was talking about these other lives and saying, you know it, so why you ask me my name when you know it so well? And I was just taken to this point where I'd fallen in love with this girl. I was living in Hong Kong at the time, and I'd fallen in love with this girl, and we were up at this waterfall, and I was sitting in this waterfall with this literally in this waterfall in this hot day with this kind of like it's just a beautiful day. And I remember screaming out to Annie, I shouted, I love running water over my head. And as he was talking to me, I said, is your name Running Water? And he said, "Why you ask my name when you know it so well?" And I said, "You're in my head," because it was like the answer was coming through to me in this kind of like running water over my head. And I said, "Is your name Running Water?" It was just so. Anyway, I felt that it was very much running water that I was working with in the mountains. And I was kind of led to understand. I locked myself away up there during winter for 6 months. I was very isolated, and it was just the Tibetans and their momos that were basically keeping me alive in the little refugee camps where the Tibetan monks live. And
hey, tell us. Yeah, we want to hear a little bit more about that. I got to ask a quick question. I know that I'm probably doing a pattern interrupt here, and I apologize.
No, please do.
I heard of these people called the Chichua.
Okay.
From Tibet. And they're supposedly about 3 foot tall. They are like Aborigines, and they are called dream eaters because they can get into people's dreams and literally affect people, good or bad. And they're supposed to come from the high mountains in Tibet. Have you ever heard or seen them?
Well, the funny thing is that, before I came to the mountains, there was a friend who was living next door to me in a caravan, and when he left, there was this. But I was helping him clear up a little bit, and when he left, just by the by, in this bush, there was this book without a cover, and it was kind of in the rain, and I just looked at it, and I picked it up, and I saw these words. I saw Agate, and I remember just looking at it and thinking, where have I heard that name for? And I opened this book. I forget the author's name now, because I kind of referenced for it. I found it so mind blowing. It was about how the Tibetans were very much linked to supposedly the king of the world, and this underground network of tunnels of the race that was here before whatever happened that kind of subverted this world. There was a race that lived here, and they had to leave for this transition, for Earth to go through this transition, and they left behind these kind of ambassadors that lived in Agate, and they were they were very, very highly advanced, much more advanced apparently than those that subvert this world. But nonetheless, they oversee the thing because, and I don't know if this is the same group, but if they're connected to the Tibetans and they were connected to deep dream space, I could imagine that these things are very. I could imagine. I've not heard of what you're referencing, to be honest with you, so I don't honestly know. But this guy was absolutely fascinated about Agate, and his access to all that he wrote about Agate and his deep understanding of the Tibetan kind of culture up in Tibet was all he found out about Agate was actually up there in Tibet. That's where he found it was monks that knew about this kind of secret order that had access, that their tunnels run apparently all around the world. Apparently there's many different cultures. I don't know if there are, but the message I'm getting, I'm never given too much detail in my messages that I'm given. The overview that I'm given is that we first of all needed to fully become. There needs to be an equilibrium with everyone who's living on this earth that's intelligent, to make sure that everyone's, we all want the iPhones and we all want the everything else. We all want the technology, but actually the real funky technology on this earth is actually the living, breathing, genetic information of what we are. All the seeds and where all the food comes from. This is the true genius. And you've only got to look at an iPhone or something like that, or all this kind of flashy apparatus. What do we end up looking at when we have our iPhones and everything else like that? We're taking pictures of ourselves, making videos of ourselves, recording, our journey in this world. It's not the iPhone. We always look at ourselves. We still marvel. This is our living and breathing selves, all our nature photos and everything else. We marvel. With all this high technology, we still marvel at the most splendid technology of all, which is the living, breathing creatures on this earth. This is the genetic. This is the inheritance that we have inherited in this earth. This is what we've got to try and preserve through this process. This is why we have to try and engage with this, with what's coming out now. This is why we absolutely have to engage in this process right now, because if this thing doesn't fly by, if this is all just a kind of like a red herring, propaganda nonsense, just whatever it is there some kind of pathway that we can begin to take right now in these next 100 days that could seriously help us help us get through this, in case it really does, if it is meant to come, and it is really meant that you're going to survive this, because it's the intellectual genes that we are, which we need to take on. And so we're going to be given so much help to get through this, but we have to engage. We have to engage on some level. And for some people, that means they've got to try and believe all of this. Now, if you've got to try and believe all this stuff, even with all these sightings and everything else like that, you're still giving yourself an uphill struggle. So it comes to a point where you start thinking, well, what is going to be the most important thing? Because what are we facing now? We're facing a prospect of several things here. We're facing the very distinct prospect of war. We're facing the very distinct prospect of economic collapse. We're facing the very distinct prospect of a seriously toxic environment that we're going to struggle to live through. We're facing the very real threat of being dragged into this like TTIP and the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and for us, yourself and myself on either side of the Atlantic, we're facing the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, which is a complete threat on our sovereignty. It denounces all human rights, because nothing can stand in the way of profit, of corporate profit. It's a dangerous thing. It's a complete loss of sovereignty. So that's a massive war for us. We become prisoners, absolute economic prisoners who have absolutely no power. We have that on a frontier. This is before we even get to Nibiru. This is before even Nibiru seems like such a red herring against a completely man-made backdrop of absolute destruction. We have this other phenomena going on, the evidence of which is absolutely beyond comprehension. The earthquakes, the volcanoes, the lineage of information, it fits together so perfectly that it's just beyond belief. So we have to think, well, I'm told we're going to get through this. I'm told we can get through this, but we can't be King Canute. You cannot, if you know that this thing's going to tug on our oceans and it's going to pull them up and it's going to fly by very quickly and it's going to release them, you can expect tsunamis. It's going to stretch not just, it's going to pull not just our oceans, it's going to also pull, the magma of this earth, the basaltic magma of this earth is also going to be stretched. It's like fluid, it's molten basaltic magma. But it's much actually heavier than granite. Ironically, granite is much lighter than basalt. And so granite literally floats on basalt. And you kind of have to start thinking that in the days of Noah, if he'd known such a thing was coming by, he would have probably been thinking, if he'd known anything about the fundamentals of science, he would have probably been thinking about a granite-based land, or being guided by his angels to a granite-based. That would be a life wrestle on turbulent seas, or in terms of a basaltic ocean. He would have been going for, a granite-based landmass, and then we've got to think that this thing's going to stir up all sorts of pollution for all the stuff that's been going on. We're going to see massive stirring up of pollution that's already been that's all being created via things like Fukushima and everything else like that. We're going to see a massive distribution of a lot of pollution thrown up into the air and being thrown into the jet streams. Enormous amounts of oceans are going to be sucked up from the Pacific when these storms take place, and they're going to get thrown into the jet streams, and they're going to get dumped all across the land at various points. So there's going to be a lot of toxins dropped in terms of this as well. And so there's going to be a lot of pollution that we're going to be creating. We know NATO is going to be creating in chemtrails. So it's very important. So things that you can do that are going to help you enormously in this case, just very simply, just to cover that whole area. It's literally cover that whole area. Just choose the areas that you think you're going to have your allotments and that sort of stuff, and start tarping off those areas to stop all the shit that's going to be falling from the sky onto those areas that you think you could grow on. Everyone who's on it right now, who's tuning into this, cover areas. Remember, you're going to be mulching as well, which means that you're going to be preparing the land for after this. When this thing's passed, if you make it through this, you're going to have land that's mulched. You're going to be ready to plant seed because there's going to be no sunlight going to it. So, and if you're low on food, you're going to be low on energy. The last thing you're going to be wanting to do. So it's a really good time now in terms of planning to find ways of covering land, find ways to purifying water on an atomic level using like hydrogen fuel cells and that sort of stuff. Find places where you know you can tap into water that's deep underground. And start storing water now, and start looking into a little bit of ways to purify water with, like, say, hydrogen fuel cells. Very simple. Pulse width modulation, if you've ever heard of that, using stainless steel plates. Real basic sort of stuff you can look at on the internet of how to release oxygen from the water, and the oxygen oxidizes toxins in the water and they drop out via sedimentation. Very, very simple techniques. So water, land and seed, before you even start thinking of it, these were all the sort of things that anyone could be doing. Nature doesn't store food. It just doesn't do that. It puts all its genius into intellectual property, into seed, into animal genetics, into fish genetics, into us, into birds, it lives in these genetic in our genetic information. This is where God, if you could call it such a thing, exists. This is the genius that we've got to keep alive. We only need to store 3 or 4 months food. If we're storing food, preparing to have allotments next year, and trying to find ways of accessing clean water, which might be difficult. So we need to know how to process that water and clean it. These are just some of the real basic stuff that we could all be doing on a subtle level that's so low effort. That there's so many things that we could be doing right now. Those who are really those who are switched on to this thing coming in, I'm trying to do everything that I'm talking about. Honestly, everything that I'm trying to talk about, I'm trying to do at the moment, because I don't want to be, I don't want to, I can't talk about doing any of this stuff if I can't do it myself, So everything I'm talking about is everything I'm putting into action myself. And I'm up here, I'm trying to get communities together. I'm trying to get, and the tide is turning on this thing. And this, you can see that Russia is now preparing, and that should be a message for everyone out there. They're putting a very clear message out by doing that. They're saying, prepare for something big. Literally, they couldn't make it. Putin couldn't make it any clearer.
Well, I'll tell you, I am sure glad that you are not just preaching, you are practicing what you're talking about. And I feel so bad about your van. You had a Westphalia, or at least a really cool V-dub that got burnt up, essentially. And this was shortly after you posted a video on Planet X, or Nibiru, wasn't it?
It was so crazy, it really was. It was so crazy because the video, I'd made a video about Planet X, and I put these sightings in, and there was this sighting that I'd taken on the 28th of August that had gone in there, and this whole thing. And I'd made a video with my good friend Bart, and we can talk a little bit more about Bart, because I've got a funny feeling we're going to end up doing a little project out here, because ironically he's just bought this theatre, who I made the guy I just made the original film with. So I was with Bart, we made this film, and in it I talked about Planet X, and I didn't really know the timelines. I was just introducing these timelines. I felt like I was onto something, and then the whole thing just started massively expanding. And but what was interesting was that I'm from you know, I have this whole political thing that I do. Technically in England, I'm a politician. I'm always running for government, and I do it as a total piss take, Rex. You know, I haven't got any policies. You know, I have crazy manifestos. I just do it to bring colour and love and light into the whole situation. And of course, the hero of democracy in Britain is Simon de Montfort. And of course, Simon de Montfort is a hero in Britain, but he's absolute murdering. He's an absolute, you know, he was a crusader. He was the only crusader really he was the only crusader in Europe with Simon de Montfort, and Simon de Montfort the elder, his father, and he was the one the pair of them slaughtered 30,000 Cathars. And it was Simon de Montfort, son of Simon de Montfort the elder, that was the hero of democracy in my hometown. Ironically, he won the Battle of 1264, the Battle of Lewes, which was the Battle of Democracy. And I was talking about, isn't it strange how he's a hero in Britain and how he's a murdering crusader in France. I'm trying not to use foul language there, because I can really have a go at Simon de Montfort, you know, because when I started looking at the story in England, I started finding that the story just didn't make any sense. You know, you had Simon de Montfort, supposedly, who defeated the King of England. Who was it at the time? Henry III, I think. Henry III, and his sons, Edward I, Longshanks. You know, the dreaded Longshanks in all the Robin Hood tales and that sort of stuff. Then you had sort of like, you know, he would become a king of England. So effectively, you had two kings and all their armies there. Then you had Henry III's brother, the richest man in all of Europe at the time, King of Germany, Henry III's brother. And then you had King of Scotland to be, Robert the Bruce, who William Wallace, because I just mentioned this because I saw you were working with another...
Yeah! Sorry.
I thought I had to say this little story for you because you had the whole William Wallace thing, you know, and William Wallace apparently took on, obviously, Robert the Bruce. But okay, so you've got Robert the Bruce, you've got Edward I as in Longshanks, you've got Henry III, you've got King Richard of Germany, the richest man, all of their armies and all the whole country in the first Norman armoury, the state-of-the-art defensive at the time in the southeast of England. And supposedly Simon de Montfort comes down, bish, bash, bosh, does them all in, the whole lot of them, with just a bunch of Londoners that he's brought down. You know what I mean? Just the story just does not make any sense whatsoever. And when you start exploring the story, and of course what's actually happened here, clear as daylight, is that there's been a revolution, there's been an uprising. They've tried, you know, Henry III has tried to tear up the Magna Carta, which his father had created, and the whole country had turned on him. So he tried to rearrange, and of course all these historians have desperately tried to rewrite history. And, you know, the biggest burial ground you've got in actual Lewes, ironically, it's got Lewes Prison built on it, Her Majesty's Service, you know what I mean? It's just like, we can see exactly what's happened. They've literally built a prison on the ground where these kind of the revolution, that all those that fought in the revolution, and they've turned the whole story. And I told this whole story, and of course this area that I was called Sex up in the Pyrenees, very near Massat, which is the kind of hippie centre, very much like Glastonbury.
Is it all about free love?
Oh man, it goes off here. It's crazy. It is a crazy place, you know. It's Mary Magdalene land. It's just like, it's hot springs and kind of like it's one of the most incredible enchanted places you'll ever go. It's like Colombia or something up in the mountains. Anyway, so I started telling the story about Simon de Montfort and about how, you know, isn't it odd that we're given this story that he's the hero of democracy, when actually the real hero of democracy, you've only got to think about the word demo, people, crassy, coming together. They tried to take over the word with one of their political spin, but the word democracy, when people come together in a big form to defeat four kings and all their armies, all the king's horses and all the king's men, you know, you're talking about a revolution. And so what happened in 1264 was literally a revolution. It was the attempted annulling of the Magna Carta, and it went terribly wrong for Henry III. And so I told this story, and along with because I was talking about whether the people are going to wake up and realize that they're being duped, that their whole democracy is being taken over. They have this theatre show of democracy, but it's not involving them. 50%, if not more, of the electorate alone, let alone all those that aren't on the electoral roll for whatever reason, are not voting. And which means that this whole system is designed to get those non-voters to do nothing. And that's what this whole theatre show you're seeing in all our political arenas that are going around the world, none more so than the political theatre that you're having to endure at the moment with sort of like Clinton and Trump. The good cop, bad cop scenario all over again, except that now, worst case scenario, it looks like they're actually going to vote for the bad cop because they're so fed up with all the rest of the bullshit. They're like, well, fuck it, excuse my French, but give us the bad cop. We've had enough of the good cop because it's just, they know it's played as a 2-horse race, but it's a 1-horse race as far as I can see. You saw John McCain straight after the election where he was the bad cop in the sort of like with the whole Obama thing, and suddenly he's working directly for Obama in the whole White House. It's just like, guys, work it out. Even with the whole Brexit thing, it's the same deal. People absolutely goaded into believing. You put David Cameron and Tony Blair at the head of pro-Europe, and yet who started the whole Brexit thing? David Cameron. And then at the end of it, when the 4 million strong vote comes in to say, look, we could turn this upside down, David Cameron takes it. He's the one who chucks it in the dustbin. It's a theatre show, getting into people's heads and trying to blame Europe for everything that has been done in the name of war, and what Tony Blair's done and what David Cameron's done and what these warlords are doing, and trying to blame Angela Merkel for trying to bring the refugees in, to try and give refuge to these refugees that are fleeing these countries that British weapons are being sold to do all this for this proxy war. That it's just.
Have you seen video footage and images of Syria? It's horrific. I mean, it is absolutely, I don't know how a freaking radioactive cockroach could live out there based on just the amount of destruction. And I can certainly see why people are looking for safe passage, because that place has just been blown to smithereens. And it's just this whole problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Yeah, except that, one thing I do hear about Bashar al-Assad is that, in the Iraq, in the whole Iraq invasion in 2003, he was the one who was giving the Christians from Iraq refuge in. He was the one giving Christians fleeing from Iraq refuge in the 2003 invasion. He's but we have to see the geopolitical thing of the situation with this, and realize that Syria sits on the Mediterranean coast, and this whole thing, that what we see now as the AIIB, the Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank, was started off as BRICS. We kind of commonly knew it as BRICS after Iran officially opened. When you want to see when the financial trouble really started, just look at the gold index over the last kind of like 20 years, and you'll see where it really starts rising at an unprecedented rate, where you're thinking, okay, this thing started right here. And that was in 2006, and that's when Nemesis really first came in, 2006, 2007. That tells you when it first came in, because you've only got to look what the money does. The money does the money can always try and do whatever we're going to try and do, which is go for safety. And so money always wants to go into gold as soon as difficulty comes in. So 2006, you see the beginning of the unprecedented rise. You look at the gold index, it's absolutely amazing. It goes off the radar, March 2006. And then we see everything moving around. We see financial systems collapsing. Then we get the 2008, and we know we're into it. We don't know what's going on. We don't know why the crazy storms or the weather's getting better. We have no idea. Planet X and that sort of stuff. It just seems too unbelievable. Most of us don't even, 2012 is just prophetic. Really, it's just prophetic. That's where it's all coming from. Prophecy. Be it sort of like Middle Eastern, be it sort of like from the Mayan sort of text, the Aztecs, the sort of Hopi text, the Mesopotamian text, the Greek text, the biblical text, the Quran, the whole lot is all telling us about, this whether it's Nibiru, whether it's the blue kachina, the red kachina, they all talk about great floods, great massive changes. It comes up in various different ways. In different types of sun gods in sort of like Egypt. It's, we're just besieged with this kind of like this ancient account all around the globe. You know, it's because the whole. I can't remember the thread I was going on then. Actually, the last in the last incident there with all the collective sightings of it all around the globe. But I guess really where I'm going overall is that we saw this in terms of. We saw this in terms of prophecy and that sort of stuff. We didn't really, it just seemed too far-fetched. It's finally and slowly reached into our lives, and we're starting to see the much bigger picture. And when we come to this point now, there's kind of, it's the picture's crystal clear, really. That the only thing that is maybe difficult to see in the process of what's happening right now is that believe it or not, everything is perfect. You know, what has actually happened over the last 2,000 years has actually increased human evolution in terms of our existence on this planet. Spiritually, it might have put us back, but in terms of our literal evolution, our intellectual evolution on this planet has jumped massively as a result of what's happened over the last few thousand years. And we've actually become basically neck and neck with the intelligences that have been influencing us and effectively dominating us. And so that's the last phase of this. That's where we're coming into now. We're coming into the last run of this, and it's just wake up time. It's just a very big thing that we're all just with if you like, the veil is coming down. It's all beyond belief now. You see it in all your science. You see it in, you know, everything is kind of in your face. You can just see that something massive is going on. There's no deception anymore. I think most people are sensing this is pretty big, what's going down. And now it's just going to be decided. You think about everything your ancestors have done to survive and stay on this planet, and so they can pass on their genes to you. It's in terms of, you know, back to Syria, I suppose. In terms of Syria, you know, this is they're trying to use this whole situation to get financial control of whatever, you know. America and Britain want ultimate hegemony, control over the financial markets of this world, to funnel all the wealth of this world through their own currency, so they can buy, if you like, in debt off the back of that movement. And that day is coming to an end. There is coming to a gold-backed currency that's going to be based on real value, and that means that we're going to lose a lot of stuff. But the money's going to do this anyway to go for safety. The US dollar cannot exist. It cannot exist in a non-speculative environment. It's like trying to take dollars up in the hill and bury them. If everyone buries their dollars simultaneously, the currency dies overnight. You know, if you bury gold, the gold will always be worth its value. And we come to this point where speculative currencies are going to struggle to get through this period, just like we're going to struggle to get through this period. Which means that the only thing that's going to be real value, and things that are going to have real value, the greatest value, far greater value than gold, is going to be clean water, good earth, covered earth that's not toxic, seed, and then medicine, and therefore, you know, warmth, you know, all the things that you're going to all the basics before you even start thinking about the complexities of things that you might like to have. There's going to be scarcity and there's going to be difficulty. And the more preparation you do now, just imagine you're going to have an allotment. Just don't believe in the bird. Just think next year you're going to have the most amazing allotment. That's really what you've got to be thinking, is that next year is going to be your year of being green-fingered. You're going to be going out there with green fingers, doing what you've got to do, and you're going to be preparing for your most fantastic garden. It's going to be a botanical wonderland that you've got to be thinking about. That's what you've got to be focusing on about. Where best to go, and how to try and work with communities of people, so you're going to get clean water. Clean water is going to come at a premium. seed is going to be rare. Stored food is going to disappear within more days. When Margaret Thatcher announced in 1982 that Hong Kong was going to go back to China, every shop was empty within 24 hours. Every shop. You get a little bit of fear-mongering. You are talking about the rapid disappearance of food off the shelves. And if food disappears off the shelf, wouldn't it be nice to know that you're not to panic because you can grow it? That you've got this gift of intellectual property you just put into the ground and hey presto? And so on the other front, finishing off, I think I've got a funny feeling we should sort of knock it on the head a little bit, but or at least I'll shut up and let you waffle on, Rex. But
man, you were on fire, Dave. I was just going with it. You had me in a hypnotic trance there for a minute. I'm just like, yes, that was great.
Well, the last little thing you've got to think about, the big new thing you've got to think about now that's been coming out is this merger between Monsanto and Bayer. And this is a terrifying implications because why would Bayer do that? I can only imagine that they would do that if they were, what's the exchange? And
let me bring something up real quick with that, because if you think about, just before I forget, you have a ginormous pharmaceutical / drug company purchasing the company that purchases that produces a large majority of the seeds as well as chemicals that go on the seeds. So, why not just do something hand in hand where you can put these like very sweet poisons and certain, they can go to the scientific level and be like, okay, well, if we use this specific chemical on this type of crop, on this wheat, we can expect to have X percentage of people that consume this over Y amount of time to get these certain elements. And then we can create new Band-Aids that will bypass those elements and then cause more problems and issues and elements. And it's just this perpetual cycle of dark ecstasy feeding off of human beings. And if you ask me, this kind of stuff, in my opinion, when you have companies that put in sweet poisons in foods and absolutely know what happens to animals and people that consume those products, in my opinion, that's an act of war.
Literally war on nature. That is literally what it is. We're walking, and can I say that, I'm doing seed packs at the moment, and I'm not trying to promote a business there. I'm literally just doing seed packs where I send them out, and you tell me, you can send donations to the channel, and because I'm in touch with various organic growers here, and so I'm just sending seed packs out, 15 different varieties in a pack, and you can get in contact with me on Subgenius TV at gmail.com and puppetdave@yahoo.com as well. I'll say that as well, just in case my channel gets taken down or anything else like that. But we've all got to be doing everything we can to be getting seed at the moment, getting organic seed out there. That is your absolute frontier. You take that away, you got no chance. You got no chance. You're completely and utterly in their hands. Then they control all the seed, all the chemical seeds. What you're looking at there is a very, very, very scary situation. If you don't have organic seed, okay, you might get 2-3 months worth of food. You might get a year, but without organic feed, without organic seed, and without soil, pre-prepared soil that's going to be clean through this process, there's going to be a lot. The messages I'm getting at the moment is this thing is going to suck up enormous amount of toxins, literally in the Pacific, in massive, great funnels. They're going to be like funnel clouds that suck up vast amounts of toxins out of the Pacific. Believe it or not, around Japan, they're going to get absolutely sucked. The oceans are going to be literally sucked up by these clockwise rotating water spouts that are going to occur, that are relatively going to be natural occurrences, if you like, guided no doubt by a higher hand of a higher thing somewhere. I don't know, but I'm getting these messages that this that enormous amount of the toxins that are going into our oceans are actually going to be sucked out of our oceans, some by these storms. I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but this whole story is crazier than you can ever believe. And it's literally it's soil, seed, and water. This kind of this fundamental triangle, as well as so many other essentials. But just think being really green fingered that next year. Just absolutely go for it. If you can't do anything, then just focus on that. It's so simple, so cheap, you know. And if you can't do even that, just water containers, old plastic bottles that people discard, they'll be like gold dust. They'll be like gold dust, you know, when the shit hits the fan. If the shit hits the fan as bad as I'm thinking it's going to be. And I'm being honest here, you know, I don't want to put a date on doom, but you can kind of see something big is going on, and all these sightings kind of lead to that. And you've got to kind of move through your belief systems and just try and just do what you've got to do. Even though you're going to have all this noise going on in here, try to move through the noise. Try to move through your opinion of people, your opinion of things, and that sort of stuff, and just try and come through all that noise and just try and come right into your body where you're in a place of doing and being, and be as productive and try to get these things together. Just try and focus on being green fingered. Try and keep it to that, so you're not trying to drag other people through some crazy belief system that is going to make it very difficult for them to come and join you. You know, right now it's going to be really focusing on big allotment projects, big community projects. Like, you're going to do something massive next year on a garden allotment veg sort of thing. Try and keep that sort of ethos going on. Get permaculture books, get nature books, get everything you can, get as much information in as possible. Get maps of your area so you can get around, because compasses might not work, navigation systems might not work, lots of things. You might want to go places and you're going to have to start thinking. All this stuff is really quite cheap. Seed is cheap, water containers are cheap, tarps and old carpets are cheap. You know, just get all this stuff and just go and mulch the land. You're going to save yourself loads of energy, have loads of organic veg for the next year. You're going to be super healthy. Just see it from that perspective. Try and push war, Nibiru, all that stuff. Even after this long talk, try and push all of that stuff aside and just think of soil, seed, clean water. And then, you know, a bit of food storage, a bit of this, all that sort of stuff. You know, buy all the staples, but that you can store a little bit in advance. Try not to go into the logic of it's going to be the end of the world, because it really might not be. Maybe this thing will fly by. Maybe we'll have a lot more grace than we realize. But the last thing I'd say is inviting in divine help now. Remember that you are, believe it or not, you are an ambassador already of the highest order on this earth. Each and every living creature is. All the hack and all the stuff that is subverting this world is not actually of this world. It is, if you like, fourth dimensional subversion that is affecting a very, very high consciousness of level of actually being. Humanity is a very, very evolved, high level species now that's being seriously subverted. And so you've got to remember that you have divine grace at your fingertips all the time. You are divine grace. In your hearts, you are absolute divine grace. That's what you are. It's like Stephen Hawking says, knowledge is what you know, but wisdom is what you are. You know, we are this divine grace that is being influenced by a lot of noise. And that is the real kind of, like in the samurai sword, that's where the real smashing on the anvil of life is occurring. The anvil is really the anvil that we're smashed on is the noise in our heads that we have to get through. And so we've just got to try and come into our bodies, move through that noise and be productive and get all this stuff together, but invite divine help in. Allow it to come in, you know, touch that beautiful space, hold seed in your hands and realize that this is divine. This is divinity. Pure organic seed is divinity. Hold it in your hands, hold it in a space of absolute beauty. Hold it up to God. It is God, you know, because you cannot exist without this divine grace. Hold it up to the highest place and pray. Don't just hope, don't just want. Pray, invite that help in, and then have the decency, the dignity to listen when those answers come. Take the cosmic crowbar out, wrench a hole in your schedule, sit down and listen to your own divinity. Don't just ask and talk to God. Listen. You know, this is what this is about. Tapping in is also not just asking, not just wanting, not just praying, but tuning in and listening and taking the answers and doing the stuff, following your intuition. This is what this is all about. This is what we came here to tonify and to tone. We've jumped humanity forward massively in this big leap, but now we've got to take the biggest leap, and we've got to wake up. Got to wake up and start doing the necessary shit in its basics. It's back to basics. It ain't in iPhones, it ain't in anything. It's in the most sacred technology of all now. It's in seed.
But I got a new iPhone 7. This thing's so fast, I could play Candy Crush and I could surf the web at the same time. It's amazing. You can't take away my iPhone, man.
No, man, I'm with you. I've got my iPhone. You know what I mean? I've got to say, when I run from Mayor of London, living outside the Garden in a pink rickshaw, I did that only because I met Harry John Rowland. Have you ever heard of Harry John Rowland? He used to live outside 9/11.
I don't think I have.
He was just religious. He was out there all the time, and he was like, he's just one of these characters that was, he wasn't trying to go for the kind of conspiracy theory or anything else like that, but he was going for the, he was just trying to help people connect with the pain of what had happened in 9/11, and just talking about the amount of people that died. And he's out there all the time. And I think his cousin had died out there. He was a lovely, lovely, lovely big black man with this big, bulging sort of like folder full of pictures and files and testimonies and documents, just going through everything. And he just religiously helped people connect with it, and he just wouldn't leave. And he was there for years and years and years and years. I think he's still there now, I don't know, but I met him and he was so inspiring. I decided if I was going to run for Mayor of London, because obviously no one's going to get any coverage, I'd have to go and live outside. I'd have to go and live outside the Guardian offices, the biggest, for me, the propaganda center of propaganda. And live outside and just in a pink rickshaw wearing a bright yellow suit, just to emphasize the fact that you could run for Mayor of London and you wouldn't be able to get an ounce of press because you're not part of their story, not part of their agenda. And I did the whole campaign with just an iPhone, with Twitter and everything else like that, just living outside with a little solar panel on the roof. And I just stayed outside there. And of course the security came and they said, right, you've got to leave. And I was like, oh, have I? Right. I was like, right, now? And they were like, yeah, you've got to go now. And I was just like, okay, brilliant. I was like, well, shall I get my suit on then? And
so that's awesome.
I'll get ready. And I'll get myself all done up and ready. I was like, so how are we going to do this? Because you obviously can't shut me off because you're not allowed to do that, but you're going to get the police, right? And so I'll get ready because I'm not going to get any press from the newspaper. If you get the police, then brilliant. That's great. So I'll get ready. And of course,
that's beautiful. How'd that work out?
Well, it just carried on. I was out there for I can't remember how long now, but I was out there for 2 or 3 weeks or something. Two and
Good for you, man.
Nobody, and I was just doing the whole thing through Facebook, and it just looked mad. There was absolutely zero coverage. And then I was in the cafe.
I would have covered that, man.
Well, people just didn't know, and I just didn't. I'd not got a YouTube channel at that stage. I was just doing this thing as a bit of a sort of like, I got my own little political party, and I was just doing this thing on a lone mission, as just to absolutely rip the piss that the whole Mayor of London thing was just a whole stitch up of people's national sovereignty, just to hand it over to a single person and just absolutely loot the country.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please? Dave, the man, the legend, the way of life. Bingo.
Yeah. Oh, man. Bless you. But it was what happened was I was just outside I was in the cafe, and I went back to the bike that was just the pink rickshaw that was just parked outside there, and it had been left open. The back with the bed was left open with a little statue of Nandi. Oh no, it was Ganesh. Sorry, Ganesh. Shiva's son, I suppose Ganesh was actually, the elephant god, the remover of obstacles in the sort of Sanskrit text. And I had that on the back of the rickshaw, and as I walked back out to the rickshaw, this guy just walks up to me, Oliver Rowe his name was, and he said, check your Twitter out, I think you're going to like me. And he just walked off, and I looked on Twitter, and there was a picture. Boris Johnson had just walked up into the Guardian. I come on his bicycle, and he'd locked his bicycle up on the bicycle rack, which was where my rickshaw was, open, and of course it had the Mayor of London mobile on the back of it. The mayor had locked his bike to the back of to the side of the bike. He'd seen this pink bike, obviously, and didn't know it was the Mayor of London mobile. And he walked around, looked in it, saw the Mayor of London sign, looked up. Oliver Road, obviously, this kind of like, it's a chef actually at the Guardian offices, had seen Boris Johnson walking up to it and just thought, oh no, this is too much. He'd got his iPhone out, he focused it, was all ready, finger on the ready. Boris looked in the back, looked round, and saw the Mayor of London mobile. Utter shock, thinking he was going to get a nice little picture and it was all going to be cool. Suddenly saw the Mayor of London mobile, looked up with the camera, just like, whoa, just the shock on his face. The moment he reads the Mayor of London mobile, looks up at the camera like, I'm being set up. Ka-chung. Honestly, I had the Dalai Lama following me on Twitter. I had millions and millions and millions of followers because of that picture. It just went viral. It's just like everyone I knew, and every one of their mates and every one of their mates knew immediately. It was everywhere. The picture just went absolutely viral. Twitter is just one of these platforms that if something comes in the right moment at the right time, it's the new frontier. And this is the biggest, scariest thing for governments, because they don't, it's the word, really, there's one word in the old days where whether we call it social networks, it was viral. And that is the power of social media, and that is the power of the change that exists in today's world. The viral power of social media, the viral power of the internet at large, really. It was a viral impact that was just immediate, massive. Twitter has become such a massive tool now. I mean, I don't use it actually that much. I let other people Twitter my stuff now, and it seems to go on its own journey. And it takes me long enough just to get a few videos together and do fundamental timelines and keep up with some of the comments on the channel, and then try and keep the wolf from the door and everything else like that. Like yourself, I don't know how you do it, Rex, but you are just a legend, Rex. I just see how you chuck these videos out.
Legend in my own mind. Legend in my own mind.
You're a machine, man.
You know, anyway, when you enjoy what you do, Dave, when you really appreciate what you're doing, and I almost feel like this was something that I was born to do, not necessarily leak project, but express information and help people find awareness all together. You know, it's kind of like a group effort here. I couldn't do this without you guys. And I think that the fact that I've had an opportunity to reach out to so many people, it has given me more fuel for the fire, essentially, to get this information out there and to make people aware. Because when I wasn't doing this, I was doing this at work. I mean, I was like talking to people at lunch. I would have people would have 15 people in the lunch break room, and 11 of them were talking to me about just some nasty poison that the powers that be are pumping into the atmosphere, into the food supply, and just stuff that we talk about on the LEAP project. So if I wasn't doing it here, I'd be doing it somewhere else.
Yeah, so I love your video. I do absolutely love you. I absolutely love it. You know, you've got a range of stuff. It's fresh. It's exciting. You've got great interview techniques as well. You know, and it's But I just wanted to mention one last name in this before we break off. Is just, you know, the 3,600 year cycle. I keep thinking about this cycle, and I keep thinking about planetary masses like, say, Saturn. That's quite big. It's supposed to be about a quarter the size of Nemesis or something like that. And it takes what, 28, 29 years, 28 and a half or something like that years to go around the sun. And we have this planet that's supposed to be 4 or 5 times bigger, this second sun. And we're supposed to assume that it takes 3,600 years to go around. And we get this from kind of the Sumerian idea, you know, from the whole kind of like, Zecharia Sitchin and the likes, and these kind of like this kind of, I don't really know, to be honest with you. I hear it battered around and that sort of stuff. But when I actually look at the model that I've given, because there are various people that are thinking of or talking to me at the moment, talking about helping me make a better timeline because I've made a very, very basic timeline here, and I've really botched it on terms of on the animation that I've made, but I'm not an animator, and it was a very difficult thing for me to do. And at the time, it was, you know, it was just really working with the basic mathematics, and I could lay it out in the flash player in such a way as to help me build that will navigate that on a very simple level. It's a very simple animation. I apologize because it's a much more complicated system.
No, I think it looks fine.
You're getting the basic understanding. And I think that's really important. Is fundamentally is we're getting a bit of an overview. I might not be right. I might be completely wrong. But it is. I think it's enough for us to start having experimenting ways to look at this. But when I put it out there, and I suddenly thought, oh my God, so Nemesis had gone from 2007, 2010 over the top, you know, basically underneath the Earth, and then over the top of the sun, back round again to where it started, round about now. And it's taken since, say, 2010 till now, so like 6 years, which means Earth has rotated in that period. It's gone 6 times further, six times, if not more, because the circumference of the Earth is orbiting the sun would no doubt be actually further than the period, than the distance that Nemesis has traveled overall from 2010 to 2016. So we can see it's traveling. We could say that Nemesis, just from that basic premise of where I show the movements in the video that I've shown, that it moves at least 6 times slower than Earth in its movement, at least by that kind of like by that diagram, by that animation, you know, by that system. And when I think about that, I'm really drawn to this idea that if it's traveling at such what seems to me, by looking at what I'm seeing, it's a relatively slow speed for such a big mass to travel at such a slow speed. I struggle with the 3,600 year orbit. I really do. I can't imagine something traveling that slow. I can't see why it would break free so much from the sun and go so far out, traveling at such what seems like a relatively slow speed. And so I really recommend anyone who's looking at the passage of this thing to start, you know, what Gil Broussard has been talking about in his timeline. I'm really starting to come back to his idea that this thing has come a lot more. And you've interviewed him a few times, haven't you? I think I've heard Gil talking with you. Have you talked with him?
Yeah, I like Gil a lot. He's been on the Leak Project several times. I'm sure we'll have him on again. And he's on the 360-year cycle bandwagon. That's what he feels is the, yeah.
And you know, I don't know what cycle it is, but if it's a 360-year cycle, which he offers a lot of evidence, it would make a lot more sense in the biblical sense, because that would have been the first coming. That would have been what the whole text would have been about. It's almost like, it seems to me sometimes like genus, Nibiru has been personified with Jesus and the same story. I'm not saying it has, and I don't want to sort of like, it's just the similarities in the story are as striking as all the other ancient stories, you know. And I think Gil Broussard is a timeline that is really worth a lot of people to start thinking about, in terms of, because where did we get 3,600 years from anyway? You know, that's kind of the time the Sumerians and blah, 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 blah. But okay, that's when they existed. But does that indicate that's the cycle duration? Looking at the speed of this thing moves and how long it has taken to come in. I think there's something in what Gil's saying, and I think a lot more people could do a lot more research in that area and look at his timeline. You know, he's a bit like Velikovsky, isn't he? I like what he's doing. He's looking at history, he's looking at patterns, and he's finding a lot of information. He's very exciting. I've got a funny feeling. I don't know if he's got a book out, Gil. I mean, he probably has. I mean, maybe it's all just in videos. I'm not too sure, but I really like where he's going with it. It makes a lot more sense to me in terms of the speed it seems to be traveling.
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of like a few people have mentioned that. I just thought I'd mention that in by the by, because the 3,600 years cycle is not. It's not. The more I look at it, the less it's working for me. You know, I don't know where it came from. We use it quite a lot because it gets referred to, and we've got to be really careful about this information that we end up using all the time in our maths, and we forget that there might be other explanations for this, and we might start seeing that this pattern has come through. We might start seeing these weather cycles have occurred throughout our history more often than we realize, and that this thing has come many times.
Well, you know what good scientists do, Dave?
They observe. And
They follow the science. Right? And that's what you're doing. I mean, you're observing, you're seeing this pattern of a much shorter cycle, and that's the information you're bringing to the table. So I can certainly appreciate that. And I would also like to mention, this is going to be totally off topic, but for those that want a good read, I would pick up a copy of Laughing Gas. You can actually pick this up on Amazon, but there might be even better opportunities to pick it up. You can get it in digital format or the paperback. It's always nice to have a book in hand, especially if SHTF does happen. But I like a book in your hand because it just, for me, it's easier on the eyes. It's easier to read. It's more tangible. I like the smell of the paper when you flip it through your thumbs. It's just it's different. It's the textile as well, combined with just something that I use the computer so much anyway. I mean, I literally spend easily 12 hours a day doing these with my podcast edits, the uploads, the format time, the interview, and everything else. It takes about 12 or more hours a day to do this kind of stuff. And like I said, I appreciate it. You know, is it work? Yes, but it's also something I enjoy doing. So certainly not looking for sympathy or anything like that, but it takes a lot of time. And when you're always on the computer looking at the screen, it's nice to break off of that and actually just have a real book that you can read through. So pick it up, folks. It's called Laughing Gas. Tell us a little bit about this, Dave, before we close out tonight.
Well, but just before it sounds like a plug, because I so appreciate you saying that, Rex. But just in case
he didn't ask me to do that, guys. I don't even think he knows that I knew about that book. So this is I wanted to bring up from my yeah.
But just in case it does sound like a plug and people think, oh, he's just trying to sell a book off the back of this, just so you know, if you do just want the book, you can get it on Kindle, you can get it electronic things, you can get it on Amazon. If you go to Lulu, I actually make some money if you buy it on Lulu. But if you just want a free copy, just to read, like a digital download, you can just download yourself and read without any, and which, just in case there's people that haven't got any cash, just want to have a little look at it, a little peruse through, don't want to do a few word search in it, see what it takes, have a little look, for absolutely fine. If you go to Laughing Gas by David Field, the Facebook page, where it says book now, I'd worked out that I could put a button in, and you only get like 6 options, and one of the options was book now, like a book now option. And I thought, well, actually I could put a link to the book now, so you could just download. So anyone who just wants the book, free of charge, just as a download, just so you can have it and read it and just get a feel of it. And if you like it, you might want to buy a hard copy, or you might just want to read it. And like you say, you might prefer to have a hard copy. Some people love digital copies. Oh, bless you. Look, some people love digital copies. So there is available Laughing Gas by David Field Facebook page. You can download it on Book Now, and there you go.
Dude, that's awesome. You look like a combination of a rock star and a carnival guy. I love it.
That ironically,
rock star, man, and I mean that as a good thing.
That ironically is the rickshaw. The front actually folded down over the handlebars, and that's what I literally lived at. That's Bob Dobbs on the side, my kind of like Subgenius TV. That's what the channel is. So that's where it started on. We all start on our crazy little footage. We used to do Bob parties years ago, and these free, and that's when we turned a political part. That's when we turned a sound system, the Bob sound system, into a political party, so we could have our own 24-hour members only bar and have the right to gather. All that was banned with the criminal justice bill. We got around it by being a political party. Of course, we had to run for government, have all night meetings, different types of different types of politicians and candidates, of course, more rhythmic, kind of like DJ based kind of candidates. But yeah, all night parties. It was that's where it all came from, really. And yeah, but like I say, you can buy it there. You can get it. I've got to say, Lulu. If you buy it from Lulu, I actually make some money, and you can get it for about 15 quid. Some people are selling it for like 50, 60 quid. Some people are selling it for silly amounts, because I've got some of the original copies. But Lulu, I actually make £5, and it costs about £15. or you can get it on your Kindles and that sort of stuff, or you can get it on or you can just download it free of charge if you want it free of charge as well.
Well, definitely pick it up on Lulu. And, I mean, if you don't have the money, I can certainly understand that and appreciate that. But Amazon, if you go to Amazon, they take like 70%, don't they? Amazon takes all the money.
Yeah, you asked what it's about. I'll very briefly try and give you a synopsis. It tries to capture, it starts on a real crazy drug-induced kind of fear and loathing kind of like story in Peru that takes the whole vibration to a very, very low point. The main character next to the protagonist, I suppose, one of the main characters, not the main protagonist in the plot, but becomes kind of almost, we wouldn't say possessed, but he just gets kind of like he's kind of opening up doors and letting some very low energies come in, and there becomes this range of desperately trying to seek high ground, forgetting that sometimes that we drop in our grace because of whatever, be it stimulants, be it because of anger, jealousy, whatever it is that drives us into some really low, painful, almost demonic sort of seeming places. And so it kind of starts in this kind of real broken space where it just seems to get worse. And from this space, it's a bunch of guys who are all kind of having a bit of midlife crisis and all kind of on this journey go to the center of the Amazon. And this whole thing starts opening up for this character that I call Dobbs in the book. And he, because my real name's David Field, obviously, you know what I mean? So I call this character Dobbs in the book, based on a true story, I like to call it. And it's set in Iquitos in Peru. And this mad sequence of events starts unfolding with this what is the strongest psychedelic, I think, in the world, ayahuasca, in terms of DMT, this ability to enter into the dream world. And this door opens up into the dream world, and so opens up this massive challenge. And that's where these answers are given. This kind of communication is open through this mad adventure, which Dobbs has to go through this whole death experience. He arrives at seeing some truths. He takes this painful truth and discovers along the lines this kind of that really all that's happening, take all the complication away, and all that's actually happening is that humanity is going from a duality into a singularity. One human, one soul, no backseat drivers. That's all that's happening. But in the process of that, who has the final choice of who we all wish to be? It has to be the human that has ultimate choices, because the human, the animal, living being, creature, has to live with the consequences of the choices that we make. And that's why it will be the human choice that decides whether we go with our ego conscious or whether we go with our higher conscience. And that's what really this is all about. And so it's coming down to some very, very simple, heartfelt lessons. And that's what laughing gas, because you see, you can look at all the truth in the world, but if you can't believe it, it's not even worth going there. And the biggest problem you've got at the moment is how to access your truth, your inner truth, beyond all the noise and interference of the fourth dimensional hack, if you will. Perhaps more akin to somehow that maybe David Icke would see or something like that. But this kind of the interference, I call it, what Buddha would call the hungry ghosts that hack into this and feed off all our stuff, that we struggle to have a moment of clear consciousness where we can actually, that we can call us, me, I, these true moments of absolute being where we are truly present. They are cherished moments because they come at such an enormous premium because they take us such an enormous amount of effort and focus and consciousness to arrive just at the here and now, beyond all the noise. And so that's what it's all about. It's just to try and help you arrive here and now so you can be rational and take in information. It just takes you it takes you on that journey, takes you through the pain of the world and helps you to carry that and come to a place where you're going to decide whether or not you're going to You're going to rise to the challenge on this one, whether you've got what it takes to rise to the challenge, to realize actually you are at peace. Everything you've ever done, you've never tried to hurt anyone, kill anyone, murder anyone. You may have made some mistakes, but overall, you're all right. And when you start realizing that actually overall, you're all right, you know, there might be shit going on, but you ain't doing it. Even these people in the army that seem to be on the front line, you know, you look in the Vietnamese war and you realize the biggest conscientious objectors ultimately came from the army themselves. They chucked out hundreds of thousands of troops, just chucked down their weapons saying American servicemen are killing women and children in Vietnam. It came from the army. And we've got to realize that humanity are the victims here all the way through this. We're the ones we keep killing. We've been the whole victim of this all the way through. And the world that we live in, we are the victims here. And this mind state that has subverted Earth is coming to its due end. And we're coming back into a clear stated mind, one human, one soul, no backseat drivers, a very clear state. And that's where this is going. It's just going to a clear mind again, you know, and then from there we're going to rebuild. But we've got to get past this little thing, and you've got to get green fingered. That's the only thing that's going to get you through this. Survival by using the natural methods. You know, nature doesn't store food. It puts all its genius in seed and genetic genius. That is nature's genius. And if you want to survive, you're going to have to plug that in. You've got to get your green fingers. You know, you've got to get these fingers doing this stuff and, you know, mulch the land, get going. It's time.
Right on. Well, Dave, it was just certainly an honor to speak with you. I can't wait to hear what your next update's going to be, and keep up the good work out there in the Pyrenees, doing what you're doing. And folks, make sure to go to the Dave Dobbs YouTube channel and also pick up a copy of the Laughing Gas. Now, also, I'd recommend you go to youtube.com/clandestine time lord, become a member there. And if you want to help out Leak Project, go to leakproject.com, subscribe, and become a contributing member at Leak Project. You'll get access to all the podcasts, either downloadable or streamable ad-free. And you can pick up a $10 high-quality vinyl decal for $10, and that certainly helps Leak Project as well. So that's my shameless plug, and hope everybody's having an amazing day. Thanks again, Dave. This is a real honor, my friend.
Oh, Rex, honestly, really, I say this bottom of my heart, you know, the honor is all mine, mate. I love your channel. I love seeing the posts that come up every now and then, all the time on YouTube, man. The honor's all mine, really. Great channel, man. Great stuff, man.
Thank you so much. And you guys, I would like to say one more thing. Do what Dave's doing and be the change you want to see. Hello. All right, everybody. Talk to you soon.